Alrighty. Well, I told you guys there was a video coming, so we're working on it. We finally got around to it. There's a very interesting story that goes along with this old miniature garden, and we will let our friend talk to us about it and fill you in. But just so you see it before I take the rototiller to it, and she can give you an explanation after the fact. But this is where we're starting, and because of obvious reasons I cannot put her in the video because of work, but we'll get back to you when the rototilling's done. All right, and we're done. Turns out that this first bed closest to me, as I'm told, this is 3 years. Was not touched last year. Remember me telling you guys about the moisture? There it is. That's all you're looking for. And yes, we just ground up the other one, and we're just going to let it go and just turn this back into grass this next year. But it's going to be the best grass in the city because of what it went through. Alrighty, I'll be back with the interview with this lady and let her fill you in as to what she thinks and where you should go. We'll talk to you guys. Alrighty, we're back. Got some other stuff done. Got a couple of flower beds done, but I've been talking to her. We're going to let her tell you in her own words what she has been through and what this has done for her, so that you guys get a clue and have an understanding from somebody else and not just listening to me.
So this place is a duplex, and it was built in 1929, and it didn't have a garage, and they built the garage probably about 30 years ago. And part of this is just fill dirt, and the other half is nothing but clay. It literally took me 2 weeks just to dig 2 to 3 inches down to get some sort of traction, just for one garden bed. And the one on your left is the one that I started 3 years ago, and it wasn't like that. It was bad. It was really bad. I only used 3 bags of organic dirt to get it kind of started, and the crops that year were, I don't know, they weren't like really great. And then towards the end of that year, that's why I met Ron, and he told me about the book, and I read the book. And then the first thing I got, because it was the easiest to get, is just the alfalfa. And I started incorporating that because I knew I wanted the worms and all of that life to come back into it, and it worked. It was crazy. And then I started doing more of the additives to it, just like the book says. And then by next year, the tomato plants were humongous. They were, I can't even begin to tell you how big they were. They were at least 3 feet high with no problem. And then the third year, they were so big. Between those and the pepper plants, the neighbor, not directly behind me, but catty corner, there wasn't all of this vegetation in the back, and he could see clearly to my garden. One of his friends actually made the comment that he couldn't believe I'm growing bushes in my backyard. He literally thought they were bushes because they were so big. And it was tomato plants, and it was the pepper plants. And I had so many tomatoes and peppers, it was ridiculous. I was running out of room. I couldn't even eat them all. I was giving them away to my neighbors and my friends. I would take them home to my family. It was nuts. That's just literally how big those plants got. So
Would you say it was extra work?
No. The work I did was trying to dig up the clay. That was the worst part of it. But had I read the book prior, I wouldn't have had to put that much effort into it.
Okay.
It's not a lot of physical effort, you know. It's just more or less just making sure that you have the additives in it. Make sure that you have the alfalfa. You have to have things in your garden to draw, like the worms, back into the garden. You have to have the nutrients back in the garden. And especially when you're dealing with a property that has not been taken care of. No one has ever had a garden that I'm aware of, or even the landlord that's owned this place for over 20 years. Nobody's had a garden back here at all. So this place is nothing but clay and dirt that has been just absolutely not taken care of. And even the grass was not doing well back here at all. So, plus there was a huge pine tree. That didn't help. We got rid of the pine tree, so we had a lot of the pine needles to deal with. But I still followed the book, and everything just grew. And then 2 years ago I started the one on the right, and it's nowhere near the one on the left because I was still working it. But this past year I haven't done anything with it, just because circumstances might make me move. So I wasn't sure what was going to happen and when it was going to happen. So I didn't do anything with the garden this year. And everything was still growing. Like when it would rain, I would see worms everywhere in the garden. It was kind of gross, I'm not gonna lie, because when you see like so many worms and they're just everywhere in your garden. I mean, it's nice because it helps the plants, but I'm sorry, it's still kind of gross when you see that many worms. But it is nice because at least you know what you're doing is working. And now that all of this is now leveled out and it's going to be grass again, she's going to have a beautiful lawn come spring.
So your first season, how much watering did you do?
Every day, twice a day.
And after you got your hands on the book and started following the guide?
The first year was like every 2-3 weeks because it was still working into the clay. And then by the third year, I think it was only twice during the summer. That was it. That was it. Just because the ground was holding the water. It wasn't running off. It was holding it. And it was, the only reason I had to water was because it was like in July and we had temperatures of 100 and 102, I think. And it was really bad and rain didn't come for like 2 weeks or more. That's the only reason why I had to water. But I had rain barrels, so that helped.
Now guys, she lives not far from me. She can actually see my yard by comparison to everybody else's yard on the street. And what do you think, watching both the winter growth and the color and fading of everybody else's yard, color of my yard, you know, with as little bit of work that it took to do the garden, and as you know, I'm doing just as little on my grass. What do you think of the comparative difference?
When I moved upstairs and I got a bird's eye view of the yards, I'm like, whose lawn is that that's so green? I start laughing because I'm like, what the heck? And then I got to see the backyards and I saw the garden and I saw the garlic. I couldn't believe how big that was. That was huge. The garlic was huge. The tomato plants were humongous. It was just, I couldn't figure out what you were doing. But I didn't know you back then.
Right.
And I felt kind of creepy just going down the street going, hey, what you doing with your lawn? What's going on with the backyard? Because then I'd look like a stalker. I wasn't quite sure how to, approach you.
And this year I started helping her. There's circumstances going on in the neighborhood, but I've come down and I've started helping her, and I've started some of the treatments on her front yard. And by comparison, the color difference has been drastic almost instantaneously after I come down and started working on it. Because I threw some of the amendments from the book down. I didn't go full bore because, again, we're dealing with a landlord who does not want to spend money on anything. But we put a little bit of extra here, a little bit of extra there, and instantly started getting the color, instantly started getting the massive growth. And we're down to almost the point where she's almost every 3 days, we got to come down here and trim the grass back just to keep the grass expanding and wiping out the weed beds. So would you recommend everybody get your hands on this book?
They'd be silly not to. I mean, I felt like an idiot because the first year I did so much work that I didn't even need to do. If I had known about the book at the time and read the book, I would have only done maybe a tenth of the work that I actually did the first year in trying to get the garden going. It was crazy. And what's really funny is now that the lawn is really super green, and it looks like a carpet. It just looks perfect. It's just so pretty, and it is such a huge difference to what it was even just a few months ago. And there's lawn care professionals that go by now, and they kind of they're pointing because they even notice how the lawn's been changing, and they don't quite know how to approach me and ask me what I'm using. It's kind of funny, but they do slow down, and I see them pointing. So,
Well, there you go, guys.
yeah, it works. You just got to read the book. It's not hard.
What do you think of the book overall? I mean, as you read through the book, were you entertained? Were you educated? Was it a pain to read the book?
No, it wasn't a pain. First of all, the book isn't really long. Okay, I've had organic books because I was in hydroponics for a while. I've had other organic books that I've read. It's like reading War and Peace, and you're reading like 200-page books, and you don't understand any of the terms that they're talking about. You don't understand the jargon, and they can't, for lack of a better term, dumb it down to where people like myself that are not professional gardeners, we just know how to garden from what we were taught, and it doesn't work everywhere because, you know, every climate, every city is different with their dirt. This book was easy to read. It was easy to understand. It was the flow was nice on it. A couple of those other books, I actually put them down because the flow was horrible and it was hard to understand and you couldn't tell what they were talking about, and I put it down. I never did pick them back up. I think I even donated the books because I just got tired of seeing them around because I refused to read any more of them. It was just that boring, and you couldn't understand it. You really couldn't.
So you were entertained by this?
Yes.
And could see how, because you've met Ray's daughter.
Yeah, I wish I would have known Ray.
And you can see how that bit of camaraderie is there in her that was there more so in Ray.
Oh, yeah.
And how he would have made me get into gardening.
Yes.
Because we were together every day. Alrighty, guys, I'm not going to drag this video out. I hope that helps. We'll talk to you all later. Have a great day.